What is the real motivation behind global taxation? What are the implications of a global tax for countries that house large multinational corporations? And most importantly for you, how will this impact your portfolio? I'll answer all of these questions from my personal perspective and opinion in this video. So let's start with what many of us woke up to this morning. G7 nations strike deal to tax big companies and squeeze havens. The not so well hidden deceptive motivation purports that it's a move to help raise billions of dollars to help cope with the aftermath of 2020. Now, the real motivation can be gleaned from Rishi Sunak's tweets, the UK's finance minister. Now, nothing in his tweets mentioned anything about 2020, helping to rebuild economies post-recession, etc. What they do make a mention of are crackdowns on tax avoidance, raising more tax to pay for public services. And even in this video that he posted of himself speaking about reform, it neglects to mention anything about recovery. Check it out.
I'm delighted to announce that G7 finance ministers today, after years of discussions, have reached a historic agreement to reform the global tax system to make it fit for the global digital age and crucially to make sure that it's fair so that the right companies pay the right tax in the right places, and that's a huge prize for British taxpayers. This is a very proud moment, and I want to thank my G7 finance minister colleagues for their collective leadership and for their willingness to work together to seize this moment to strike a deal of historic significance that finally brings our global tax system into the 21st century.
And there you have it, folks, straight from the horse's mouth. Mr. Sunak himself says that he's proud that this moment was seized in order to, quote, bring our global tax system into the 21st century. Obviously, this isn't a temporary tax move that will go away once funds are raised to help bolster our recovery after 2020. Never let a good crisis go to waste, as they say, right? Now, many of you know that I'm a gold and silver guy, and I focus heavily on currencies, debt markets, and the solvency of economies. Now, if we take a look at the definition of solvency on Investopedia and replace the word company with the word country, let's see what it has to say. And I quote, "Solvency is the ability of a country to meet its long-term debts and financial obligations. Solvency can be an important measure of financial health since it's one way of demonstrating a country's ability to manage its operations into the foreseeable future." In my personal opinion, this is the real motivation behind global taxation: solvency. And the implications of this global taxation on large countries is glaringly obvious once you take a look at the key economic metric for a country's economic health. That's right, debt to GDP. Remember, the global taxation was kicked off by the G7. That's important to remember when keeping debt to GDP in mind. Why? Well, the 7 countries within this G7 all have wild levels of debt to GDP. Let's start with the wildest, number 2 on this list of all measured countries, Japan. Now, Japan has a whopping debt to GDP ratio of 266%, meaning that as a percentage of GDP, their debt is 266% of it. Now, if you look at Japan, it doesn't seem like it's in a rough position on the exterior. They look like they're humming along. Unfortunately, Japan has been experiencing disinflation since the 1990s after their meteoric rise to the economic world stage. They printed a bunch of money, issued a bunch of debt that they owed back to themselves, and haven't been able to spark reasonable growth in decades. That's important to note because that is what some economists see on the horizon for the United States. Next, we don't have to look too far down to see that the next G7 player on the list is Italy with a whopping 156% debt to GDP. Now, if we keep scrolling here, let's keep scrolling. The next two countries that we'll find back to back are Canada and France. They have 118% and 116% respectively. Next on the list are my country, tis of thee, the United States and the UK with 108 and 100% respectively. And finally, the only country with a somewhat healthy exposure to debt would be Germany, and that is with a 69.8% level. So guys, back to this word solvency here. The picture may be getting a bit clearer for you now, but what does this have to do with you? Well, the implications for your portfolio now that these large multinational corporations will have to deal with, these global taxes, it's pretty interesting. The jury is still out on this, honestly. You'll find articles online about how corporate tax hikes will tank the stock market. You'll also find some saying that it won't tank the stock market. My view is that large companies that have healthy balance sheets, can produce nice earnings, aren't diluting their shares out the wazoo, have a pretty nice premium on their PE ratios, they will be able to stomach this hike better than large companies that do not have healthy balance sheets. For myself, it may mean looking closely at what companies I'm invested in and comparing them with companies that may not be able to stomach such hikes. Perhaps we'll even see capital flow out of those companies and into companies that will be able to stomach those hikes. So I'll definitely be watching out for, all of these things within my own portfolio. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are regarding this. Are you even exposed to large multinational companies? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, check out the first link in my description. I'm building a wait list of emails for one-on-one video and audio calls to speak with me personally regarding gold, silver, or personal finance, etc. Thank you for watching this video. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're new. It's Black Bullion for goldandsilvertoday.com.